All right, so we're back. Next step. So I got to cut some runners. So the idea here is I'm going to use some scrap 3/4 inch oak. Um, I guess it's an inch and a half, 2 inches. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And I'm going to cut some 23-inch runners for top and bottom on the sides. So I'm not going to use drawer slides. So I was worried about the weight. I guess I better explain myself. The, uh, the slides I really wanted to get that would support a bench sander, a cast iron bench sander, were $65, and I probably could have cheaped out and got the $20 slides, but I didn't want to compromise. So apologize here. I'm having trouble focusing. All right, it's working now. So I decided to just go the easy route. I'm going to make runners out of oak on the sides. I'm going to put a top runner and a bottom runner, and a 3/4 inch plywood shelf is going to ride between those runners. And I think it's going to be fine. I don't know for sure how it's going to operate just yet, but I only need to slide out about 12 to 15 inches, and the shelf's going to be 23 inches, so I only need to come out like halfway for the sander to be usable. And I don't see a need for a full extension slide, and I've got the material on hand for the shelf and the runners, so that's what I'm going to do. All right, so I'm going to make the runners 23 inches. I've got 2 pieces of oak, so I need to cut 4 pieces at 23 inches, and that's it. So we're going to cut those now. I'm going to use my miter gauge. I've set my fence at 23. I'm going to use my miter gauge here just as a cheap or easy way. The cuts don't need to be critical. I'm not making any cabinets here, so ideally I'd use my cross-cut sled, but my cross-cut sled's not built yet. So I'm going to get to that next. So let's fire up the saw and make the cuts. Alright, so those 2 are good. Alright. So there's my 4 runners. So the idea is, again, I'm going to do a shelf. So imagine this. You got a runner on each side. You got a runner on the top. And the shelf is going to slide in between the 2 runners, if that makes sense. So I'll try to capture a better angle when I install the runners in the shelf. I think if I sand the edges and maybe apply a little bit of paste wax to the bottom of the shelf edges and maybe the top too, and then the bottom and top of each runner, it'll be fine. It's not like it's a kitchen cabinet drawer where you're going in and out, multiple times a day. We're talking about a bench sander that I might use twice a month, 3 times a month. So I might fashion some kind of handle in the front, pull it out, use it, push it back in, and I'm done. So, all right, next step is to mount these runners. I think I've made the measurements. I'll double check the measurements and then come back and show you how I mount the runners to the cabinet. All right, so we're back. So I've been mocking up the shelf. Got the runners, the bottom runners in. I clamped them up real quick to see how much clearance I have. I need about 15 inches here to get the miter saw in and out. And I need 12, 11 and a half, 11 up here for the sander. And then I'm gonna have a 3/4 inch shelf. So I mocked up some rail lengths or heights, and I used a piece of scrap here to make sure I clear the miter saw. And I think this is all gonna work. So what I did off camera is I cut a spacer. Yeah, so I cut a spacer to make sure. What I'll do is I'll stick the spacer in, and I'll drive a screw, and then I'll go to the back, put the spacer in the back, drive a screw. I'll put a bead of glue on these as well. But I think I got it where I want it. So let's put this sucker in. I got some Gorilla Glue left over, but I gotta tell you, I'm not real enthusiastic about how this Gorilla Glue works. The bottle is just terrible. I don't know, it's probably me doing something wrong, but I mean, glue is glue. Anyways, let's take our little test piece out. Let's take our clamps off here. I think what I'll do is take the clamp completely off. And I know this is probably hard to see, but all right, so we'll put my spacer in. Yep, that looks like it's gonna work. So we'll put some glue on it. Let's put, I don't guess it matters. Let's put this side in. I don't think it's gonna take much glue. Really don't need any at all, but all right, so let's get this puppy up here. I want it flush with the front. We'll put a clamp on it. And we will run a screw in there. I think I had a screw up here. And I need to change the bit. Don't you love how all the screws are different bits? Yeah, I love that. And this bit's so long that all right. Let me go find a real bit. So we'll take our spacer out. We'll take a drink of beer. All right, you should be able to see this. All right, we'll put a clamp on it. By the way, these Irwin clamps are awesome. Screw. And I think I'll put one in the middle. I gotta tell you, I hate those. I hate those spec screws with a passion. So let's run a drywall screw in. Pretty sure you can see that. Yeah. See what I mean? I mean, it's just a better screw. All right, so got that done. Take our clamp off. We'll put our spacer in here. Need to get our back clamp off, I think. All right, we want, don't care what goes in. And what I'll do is I'll sand the top edge of the runner after it's in. Okay. Got our spacer in. Put a clamp on it. Yeah. And no more spack screws. All right. Beautiful. All right, let's turn this puppy around. Let's get our spacer in here. All right. Well, that split. Suppose I should be drilling pilot holes. I think the glue will hold it. It'll be okay. I actually have some pilot holes in this board already, and I didn't use them, so. All right, so there's the bottom runners. So what I'll do is I'll use a spacer for the width of the shelf, and I'll put the top runner in using the spacer, and then I'll come back with a sander, and I'll sand very, lightly, not terribly deep, the runners before I put them in. So I think this will work. So what we'll end up with is a shelf that goes across here. It'll clear the miter saw. There's enough room. I'll pull out the sander, be able to push it back in. It won't tip because there'll be a top runner holding the top of the plywood. And I might put a stop in so the drawer, or the shelf, it's not a drawer, the shelf can't come out too far and then tip over. But again, there's going to be a runner here that's going to capture it all the way out, and I only need to come out halfway, so I think this is going to be just fine. All right, so be back with you. I'll do some mock-ups. I don't want to do that on camera. The top runner, and we'll go from there. So thanks. All right, so we're back here putting the top runners in, and then we're going to cut the shelf and put the shelf in and mount the sander. About got it done. So I'm doing some dry fit here. 3/4 inch piece of plywood is what the shelf's going to be. So I'm using a piece of scrap to figure out where to mount this thing. And what I'm thinking is I want it snug, but I don't want it too snug because I want it to slide. So I'm going to use a piece of cardboard and see if maybe that's the right way to do this. So it'll be a piece of scrap plus a piece of cardboard. And that should give it enough thickness to, if we pull the cardboard out, yeah, and it just barely wiggles, so I think that's going to be about right. So what we'll do is we'll get the cardboard back in there, and we'll put a screw. I'm not going to glue this piece because I might want to change it in the future. So what we'll do is we'll put a screw up front, and that way I can tilt the back. We'll drill a pilot hole here. Okay, so let's turn this around. We'll put our cardboard in here in the back. And I think we'll clamp it just to make sure it doesn't move. And I think that'll do it. Not sure if you can see that. I think you can. We'll put one in the middle. Again, I'm just using 1.25 inch drywall screws for this. Not sure where I put my hole. Oh, there it is. All right, well, let's see how we did. Yeah, that's gonna slide great. All right, so we'll do same thing over here. You know, we ought to do the front first. Clamp. Okay, get this back side. Now let's clamp it. I don't want it moving around. All right. So that should work. This piece is too short, but I got to cut the shelf. It's a little loose, but I think that's going to help it because the plywood is likely going to be slightly bowed. It's a little looser than I would hope, but I think it'll be just fine. All right, so I'm gonna get set up to cut the shelf and be right back with you.